Shalom. This is a warning that there is a hidden plague across the land right now. There is death in the pot. Starting in 2 Kings chapter 4. And Elisha returned to Gilgal, and a famine in the land, and the sons of the prophets sat before him. And Elisha said to his servant, Set on the great pot, and boil pottage for the sons of the prophets. And he went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a vine in the field, and gathered of it wild gourds, his garment full, and he cast it into the cauldron of pottage, for they knew not. And he poured it out for the men to eat, and it came to pass that when they were eating of the pottage, that lo, they cried out and said, There is death in the pot. Satan, the father of lies, he works to infiltrate, mix, hide, deceive, desecrate, and destroy anything that Yahweh has blessed or has sanctified. The main targets of Hasatan are the very things that Yah has blessed, which includes his son, his name, his word, his Sabbath, his feasts, his people, his creation, and his land. Our Heavenly Father has blessed all of these things in Scripture, and so Hasatan, better known as Satan or the devil, he fights against the things that Yahweh has blessed. Yahweh has blessed his people multiple times, and he's still looking to pour out his blessings upon his people. Satan knows this, and so guess what? We are targets of the adversary. What is the adversary doing? He infiltrates. He has infiltrated many churches. He mixes in his lies with the truth of the word. He then hides the truth underneath his false doctrine narratives. He then deceives the assembly when those lies are spoken to them, and then he desecrates the temples of the assembly, which are their bodies, through the false doctrines that they exercise unto uncleanness and defilement. And what does his word say is the final result for many of these deceived, defiled people? Destruction. That is Hasatan's game. Know that you are a target and reject his lies. Unclean was part one of the message, and it gave a brief summary of clean and unclean animals, so please refer to that if the difference isn't already very clear to you. One animal that he specifically tells us that is unclean is the pig, and we are warned of this both in the books written by Moses and also the prophets. Now Messiah has told us, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Now taking up a cross represents a type of death. Messiah is telling us that something must die for us to follow him, and he is the only way to eternal life. And that way is a narrow way and a difficult way that few find. And Paul testifies to this truth and gives us some examples of what must die. And Paul says, Mortify therefore your members, every part of your bodies which are on the earth, all those things, fornication, uncleanness, lust, greed, and coveting, which is idolatry. Mortify in Strong's is G3499 and is defined as to deaden, be dead, or mortify, and figuratively to subdue. So to mortify your members is to crucify them in the figurative sense. It is subduing yourself, subduing your flesh from having these unrighteous thoughts and performing these unrighteous actions. For these things, including uncleanness, as Paul said, the anger of Elohim comes upon the children of disobedience, in which you may have also done at some time when you walked in the ways of the world. Woe to them that sin and keep not my commandments, says Yahweh. I will not spare them, he says. Come out of her, my people. Do not follow the ways of the world, and do not defile my sanctuary. Do not eat or touch the unclean thing. For Yahweh knows all them that sin against him, and therefore he delivers them unto death and destruction. For now are the plagues come upon the whole earth, and you shall remain in them, because you did not hearken, you did not hear and obey. For Yahweh shall not deliver you, because you have sinned against him. That is a very strongly worded warning. Okay, so with all that as our foundation, let's go to Leviticus 11, starting with verse 32. And whatsoever one of their dead bodies shall fall upon it, it shall be unclean. Every vessel in which work shall be done shall be dipped in water, and then it shall be unclean unto even. And every earthen vessel into which one of these dead unclean animals shall fall, whatever is inside it, that also shall be unclean, and that earthen vessel shall also be broken. Whatever soup, whatever salad, whatever food is in it, that food is also unclean. And all food that is eaten on which water shall come upon such a vessel shall also be unclean. Directly from Leviticus 11. And every beverage, every drink which is drunk in any of these vessels shall be unclean, and everything on which there shall fall of their dead body shall be unclean. Ovens and stands for jars shall be broken down and cleaned. All of these things are unclean, they shall be unclean unto you, says Yahweh. And there is a very big issue of defilement here that our Father clearly wants us to recognize and avoid. And what is the issue? It's hidden within the practices of modern-day restaurants. They have big menus that caters to everyone. They have a nice salad for you, some nice vegetables. They have chicken and steak, which are clean, but then they also have shrimp and pork chops and most everything else. They have clean foods, but then also unclean animals on their menus. Now let's say at the beginning of the day in a restaurant, the first person is served a breakfast plate full of ham and eggs. The eggs are fine, but the ham is from an unclean animal, the pig. That used plate then goes into the restaurant's dishwasher, and then shortly thereafter it comes back to the next person for their meal. Then after they're done, that plate goes back into the restaurant's dishwasher, and then the plate is again used to the next person and the next person all day long, right? By FDA standards, if you put that plate in hot water for a certain amount of time with some detergent, it's clean and the next person can eat off of it. Well, guess what? That wasn't what the word of Yahweh said. His word says that every vessel in which an unclean animal is on that vessel or in that vessel, that cup, that bowl, that plate, those utensils, you have to dip it in water, but it is still unclean until sundown. So the plate that had the unclean pig on it, that plate is now unclean. That plate goes into the dishwasher. The dishwasher starts and sprays water onto the unclean plate. But that dishwasher water also sprays all of the other plates and utensils that are in the dishwasher. The water splashes on the unclean plate and then splashes onto the other plates. That unclean water in the dishwasher then makes all of the other plates in the dishwasher unclean, defiled. Now, if you put the next meal on that unclean plate and serve it to the next person, his word states that all food that is eaten from which water shall come from such an unclean vessel shall be unclean. That means that every person is served unclean food in that restaurant from then on until the evening, even if they just have a vegetable plate next, even if they just have a salad. All the dishes in the dishwasher were made unclean by the water that splashed off that first plate that first customer ate that plate full of ham. Those plates and all the food that's served on them for the rest of the day until sundown are unclean. That is the word of Yahweh. This deception is Satan at work. He is defiling pretty much everybody that goes into almost every single restaurant without them even knowing it. His deceptions go so much deeper than almost anybody has really understood. And even more, if the dishes are glass, ceramic, or porcelain, understand that they are made from the earth. Glass dishware is made from sand. Porcelain dishes are made from clay. They are earthen vessels. His word states that if it's an earthen vessel unto which a dead animal has been put on, that earthen vessel, that ceramic or porcelain or glass plate, has to be broken, never to be used again. The restaurants obviously reuse their earthen dishes, their ceramics, their porcelain, or their glass plates. Even if it's a metal plate, from the first time that an unclean animal has been served on it, remember, it's unclean no matter how many times they put it through the dishwasher, it's unclean until even. And all the food that's put on that plate is unclean, and that food defiles anyone that food goes into. If you happen to eat from that plate, your meal, no matter if it's a salad or a fruit bar or a vegetable plate, you are eating unclean food per the word of Yahweh. This is a part of the deception of the modern world at work. Modern day restaurants, there is death in the pot. Now, all of that may have come as a big surprise to you, but there's more. Next, go to Leviticus 3 And it speaks about the sacrifice offerings of the herd of the flock, and all the fat that is upon the inwards, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, which is by the flanks, and the caul above the liver with the kidneys. The priest shall take away all of that fat. It is Yahweh's. It shall be a perpetual statute for your generations throughout all your dwellings that you do not eat that fat. The fat that Yah is telling us not to eat is the hard fats around the internal organs of the animal. The hard fat is in the abdominal cavity, around the liver and the kidneys. Our Father is not talking about muscular fat. That's the fat that's in the muscles of animals. So don't get confused here. Don't think that you cannot eat any meat ever again because that meat is graded at 95% in a store, meaning 95% meat and 5% fat. The fat that is grading is the muscular fat, and that is not the type of fat that is prohibited in Leviticus 3. Muscular fat is not prohibited, but the hard fat is. We do need to focus on the hard fat because His word states that these are perpetual statutes in your generations and in all of your dwellings. Okay, so suet is the modern name for the hard fat that is found around the neighborhood of the kidneys and liver and around the other abdominal organs from farmed animals. Those farmed animals include cows, sheep, goats, and pigs. There are different names for these hard animal fats: suet, tallow, and lard. Suet is a general name for the hard fat that's found in the intestinal areas of any animal that is harvested. Tallow is an euphemism, not an exact definition, mind you, but an euphemism for the hard fats from cows, sheep, or goats. Tallow is extracted from a carcass as part of the slaughterhouse processing. Tallow and other animal fats are then processed into fatty acids. These fatty acids are used in cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, personal care products, inks, paints, coatings, adhesives, lubricants, soaps, and food. Tallow is also used in industrial animal feed and bird food. There is a special name for the hard fat of the pig. It's called lard. Lard is also extracted from pig carcasses during the slaughterhouse processing and used in multiple products. Now, having said that, remember that we just mentioned that tallow is really just an euphemism. Tallow is not federally defined or regulated, which means that there is no guarantee that a manufacturer does not label pig fat as tallow. Again, the fatty acids are used in many products: soaps, creams, lotions, ointments, deodorants, shampoos, hair straightening products, shaving creams and foods, chewing gum bases, suppositories, and these fatty acids are obtained from the slaughterhouses as a byproduct known as tallow or animal fat. A big, wide, unregulated term. It could be from any of the animal sources. But there's not going to be much animal fat harvested from goats or sheep, as they're not processed in this country to a large scale. There are 2 mammals that are processed in large quantities: cows and pigs. So the hard animal fats from cows and pigs is made into fatty acids through the manufacturer's processing after the acquisition of the hard fat from the slaughterhouses. These hard fats are then made into other fatty acid ingredients to be put into other products. Remember that these fatty acids are produced from the hard fats of cows and pigs. There are many different types of fatty acid ingredients that are produced frequently by the food industry. We're going to be mentioning a number of them. One of these fatty acid ingredients is stearic acid, and we'll come back to that. Other disguised animal hard fat ingredients are the glycerides, mono, di, and triglycerides. The glycerides are frequently listed on food labels as mono and diglycerides or as monoglycerides. These are terms you'll want to remember. Glycerin is another ingredient made from these hard fats. Glycerin is used in soap, toothpaste, mouthwashes, chewing gums, ointments, extensively in cosmetics, perfumes, lotions, skincare products, glues, plastics, lubricants, a thickening agent in liqueurs, antifreeze, and even brake fluid. Glycerol is just another name for glycerin. It can also be labeled as E422 in food. Multiple names for basically the same product, glycerin. You'll want to memorize these ingredient names and you'll see why in just a few seconds. Now, glycerin and these other fatty acid products can also be made from plants or synthetic sources. However, the main source in this country for the fatty acid products is not vegetable-based and it is not synthetic-based. The main source is from animal hard fats. Why? because if you grow a plant, you usually have a different whole food product that you're growing that plant for. Corn is going to be grown to go into cans of corn to sell. Producing a fatty acid from corn means that a lot of that corn is going to become other inexpensive byproducts that are not sold as food. So the fatty acid from corn is higher priced to make up for the loss in value of just otherwise putting all of the corn as a whole into a can to sell to eat. Synthetic fatty acids are more expensive because they come from petroleum products like natural gas. Synthetic fatty acids are also not supposed to be in food products. Animal hard fats, on the other hand, is just a waste product from a meat processing plant that they would otherwise have to spend money to dispose of themselves. Fatty acid ingredients made from the hard fats of the slaughterhouse animals produces the least expensive products. So that's what's used in the large majority of food and other items. Can you see where this is leading? The adversary is at work trying to deceive us, to make us unclean, trying to defile us, trying to make us go against our Father's instructions. Now let's look at some of the ways these hard fat products are used. Specific deceptions. We just saw two ingredients, mono and diglycerides and monoglycerides, that are made with animal hard fats. Remember that Leviticus 3 states that we are prohibited to eat these animal hard fats, even from the clean animals like the cattle. But there is now a very large number of food items that have these prohibited ingredients. Let's look at breads. 10 or 15 years ago, breads did not have any animal hard fat ingredients. Now, when you go to the stores and look at the food labels on the loaves of bread or a pack of buns, etc., 80% of the breads and maybe more have these prohibited ingredients. You'll see those ingredients, monoglycerides or mono and diglycerides. These glyceride ingredients are a type of fatty acids that comes from animal hard fats, from cows and pigs. And it doesn't matter whether it was a cow or a pig. Remember what Yahweh's instruction in Leviticus 3 says, you shall not eat that hard fat. We're not supposed to eat that hard animal fat or anything that is produced from that hard animal fat, from either a pig or a cow or goat or sheep. Animal fat in your bread. Animal fat in your peanut butter. That third label is Hershey's chocolate syrup. Look at its ingredient label. You will find mono and diglycerides. Animal hard fats are making their way into many, many products. Bluebonnet, country crock margarines, many types of chips, Nestle mixes, popsicles, ice cream bars, even the Walmart ice cream bars that are labeled kosher. But those quote-unquote kosher ice cream bars contains mono and diglycerides and bioengineered food ingredients. Start looking at the ingredient labels before you buy them. The majority of processed foods now have mono and diglycerides or other hard fat processed ingredients. Our Father says, "Come out of her, my people, that you do not partake of her sins and you do not receive her plagues." Do not be partakers of her sins. The sins here are the prohibited and unclean animal fats that are hidden in food products. There is death in the pot. Soaps and shampoos? Almost every single major brand is made with animal hard fats. At this point, assume that every soap and every shampoo has animal hard fat products in it, unless its label specifically states otherwise. It's that prevalent. Vegan organizations closely monitor the ingredient list for any animal products, as you may already know, for different purposes than believers, but we can use their vigilance to help us choose products that do not have these animal hard fats hidden in the products. For example, and this is directly quoting a vegan website, Ivory soap carries the phrase 99.44% pure on its label. Yet, this soap is largely made from rendered animal fat obtained from slaughterhouses, end quote. Most soaps are really just a bar of processed pig and animal hard fat with just a touch of lye and perfume. So most people now, when they wash, are just washing themselves with a bar of pig fat. Soaps, shampoos, conditioners, push bottle soaps, look at all of them. Most common hand sanitizers have glycerin in them. When you go into a public restroom that has liquid soap dispensers, guess what? It's going to have glycerin in it that comes from animal hard fats. The animal hard fat source glycerin is much cheaper than plant or synthetic products, as mentioned before, and so the public restrooms that put that liquid soap out there for free for everyone to use, you can do the math there. The glycerin is not going to be from a plant product or a synthetic product. Glycerin is the word. Glycerol and glycerin are the main offenders for these soaps. Pig fat. One other animal hard fat ingredient to remember is sodium tallowate. And if you're wondering what the problem is, since we're not eating the soaps and shampoos, remember that these animal hard fat products are coming from unregulated sources. They can be either cows or pigs. There are about 35 million cows slaughtered every year in the United States, but there are over 125 million pigs that are slaughtered every year in the United States. So do the math. There is pig fat in almost every food or soap product that has a fatty acid ingredient listed. They're all mixed together. Leviticus 11 clearly states, "Do not even touch the carcass of the unclean pig." When you use these soaps or shampoos, you may be physically cleaning yourself up from dirt with the lye in the soap, but you are spiritually making your body unclean, defiling his temple where he dwells with the unclean hard fat from pigs. Let's look at beauty products. These animal hard fats and proteins are the components of most every beauty product now. There is no cheaper source of these substances than a slaughterhouse where the hard fats are waste products otherwise. That means that most beauty products, unless they are deliberately formulated to be vegan, contains animal products. Glycerin is the main moisturizing ingredient in these beauty products. Pig fat. Sorry, ladies. Unlike food, which has a somewhat decent ingredient label, you won't be able to determine a cosmetic item's vegan status by reading the ingredient label because beauty companies use countless substances that aren't allowed in food, and they are not required to put these substances on the label. These chemicals can come from vegan or animal sources, and remember which of these sources is cheaper. It's not from the plant sources. How about toothpaste? It's glycerin again. Pig fat. All the major brands. Colgate, Crest, Sensodyne, Aquafresh, Arm & Hammer, Tom's, Parodontax, Rembrandt, Burt's Bees, and there are others. All of these brands have glycerin in almost all of their products. Not every single product under all of these brand names have glycerin in them. For example, Colgate has one product that does not contain glycerin. But these brands by and large use glycerin as an agent to keep their toothpastes from caking up. It's the cheap ingredient. Look at your toothpaste and make sure that you're not going to brush your teeth with unclean pig fat again. Pharmakia is the Greek word for sorcery in the book of Revelation, which means medication, pharmacy, or by extension, magic, sorcery, or witchcraft. This is what the pharmaceutical industry is built upon. So let's look at over-the-counter medicines. Magnesium stearate is another ingredient to memorize. It uses stearic acid as one of its processing ingredients, which is a fatty acid which comes from animal hard fats, which comes from the animal slaughterhouses, pig fat. Tylenol has magnesium stearate in many of its products, as well as many other medicine products, pills, caplets, etc. Magnesium stearate is another ingredient that comes from animal hard fats, cows and pigs. In the U.S., beef and pork production is about the same, about 27 billion pounds every year. So there's probably equal amounts of cow and pig fat in each of these fatty acid products that we've been talking about. And remember, when you consume it, food or medicine, Leviticus 3 says, do not eat the hard fats. NyQuil and many other liquid medications have glycerin in them. Motrin has stearic acid, which is yet another animal hard fat fatty acid ingredient to remember. Now, here's some good news. This is a list of safe shampoos, vegan shampoos that do not contain any animal products, at least as of the date that is being shown right there. This list came from vegan.com, so be sure to refer to that website or others like it for the most up-to-date product list information, products that do not have any hidden animal hard fats. There are still ways that we can live and still fulfill the glory that He has set out in front of us. There are vegan soap brands, soaps that do not have any hidden, unclean, hard fats in them. And again, this list is from vegan.com, so check there for the latest current list. Having said these things, we understand that there are some people that have some very serious medical conditions and have to take pharmaceuticals or over-the-counter drugs to even stay alive in many cases. If this is you, talk to your doctor and see if your prescription is plant-based, and if it's not, see if there is an alternate plant-based prescription or over-the-counter that can be substituted. Now for medications, there is a website, veganmed.org, that sells products that are certified or verified, but not guaranteed, that do not have any animal-derived products in them. Again, check every label of every product that you are buying and have all the animal hard fat ingredients either memorized or on a notepad that you carry with you or on your phone so that you know for sure that the product that you are buying, that you're going to put on yourselves or eat, is clean and is animal hard fat free. Pray for healing. If you are faithful to Him and His Word, He will be faithful to you. He will bless you more than you can imagine. Medicines, pharmakia. Be careful. There is death in the pot. Okay, now let's look at natural flavors. This is another huge hidden deception, another way that unclean pig fat and prohibited hard fats from the other animals, cows, sheep, goats, are snuck into food products. Natural flavors is now showing up in so many food products. Both natural and artificial flavors are synthesized in laboratories, but there's a big difference between the two. Artificial flavor is processed using gas and oil, and other seemingly inedible source substances. Don't eat artificial flavors. We want to keep His temple as clean as possible. But artificial flavors is not the worst of the two. Natural flavors, on the other hand, can refer to anything that comes from a spice, a fruit, a vegetable juice, yeast, herbs, bark, wood, leaves, meat, seafood, clean seafood or unclean seafood, and you'll never know. Also poultry, dairy products, or anything fermented or processed from these foods, according to the Federal Government Food and Drug Administration. For example, to create a passion fruit flavored product with actual passion fruit, they would have to consume a quarter of the world's passion fruit supply to make this passion fruit flavored product. Obviously, that's economically unfeasible for a food manufacturer. Instead, a food manufacturer's flavor team in the laboratory will look for cheaper sources to mimic the fruit's molecular fingerprint as it lands upon the tongue's taste buds to make it taste like passion fruit. Once they figure out the right molecular fingerprint that will make the correct taste, they will then dilute that molecular fingerprint with water, ethanol, and glycerin. Remember that word? And despite the fact that these flavors are blended in the lab, they are still considered to be natural on a label according to the CDC. The FDA does not require food labels to say what is in a company's natural flavor unless the ingredients are a common allergen like milk, eggs, tree nuts, etc. Glycerin is not an allergen. It is not required to be listed. For those who want to know exactly what's in the natural flavor of any specific food product, well, it's like cosmetics. You will not get any clarity anytime soon. Typically, those are trade secrets kept by the food manufacturers. So you have to assume the worst case for any natural flavor, that the glycerin used to make the natural flavor comes from animal hard fats, either the unclean pig or the prohibited hard fat from the cows. We are not supposed to eat the hard fats. And glycerin comes from the hard fats, and the glycerin goes into the natural flavors. Another specific unclean natural flavor is called cochineal. Cochineal is literally bug juice. Cochineal is a red coloring material from the dried bodies of a bug. Carmine red, or just carmine, is what it is commonly called when it's listed as a standalone food ingredient. Cochineal, or carmine, is used as a color additive in foods, drugs, and cosmetics. Yogurt, candy, gelatin, meat, and beverages, including fruit juices. Also cosmetics and lipsticks. The red lipstick can come from bug juice. This information comes from Fenaroli's Handbook of Natural Flavors. Specifically, we're looking at the 6th edition here from 2010. It's an expensive book. They don't want you to see what's in it. Castoreum is another disgusting and unclean natural flavor. Castoreum is beaver juice. Castoreum is a glandular secretion from either the male or the female beaver that they mix with their urine to mark territory. The secretion comes from the castor sac, which is next to its anal cavity. A reminder that beavers are unclean animals. Castoreum is used in food. They take the castor sac and the castor fluid and use it in natural flavoring. Castoreum is used as a flavoring component in vanilla natural flavorings, in foods and beverages, baked goods, chewing gum, candy, dairy products, gelatins, gravies, and more. Natural flavors. There is death in the pot. The next deceptive practice that most people don't know about is frozen meat additives. This is another very bad surprise. Behind the scenes in food manufacturing, frozen meats are being defrosted and then plumped up with water and other additives and then refrozen all over again, and the consumers are none the wiser. Almost any low-grade mass-produced frozen or processed meat will have been treated in this manner. What they do is bulk up the meat. They want a nice plump chicken breast to sell you, and maybe their chicken breasts aren't as plump as they want them to be. So what are they going to do? They're going to inject additives in the chicken breast to make it plumper, to make it weigh more. They plump up the meat by getting it to absorb water and additives called a brine. And this brine consists of water and 5 main items. The first item is called meat glue. Just the name sounds disgusting. The other items in this brine are hydrocolloid, phosphate, and fiber is sometimes made from cellulose. And here's a fun fact, cellulose is another disguised name. It's the food ingredient name for wood, trees. When you see cellulose on an ingredient list, that's a tree. But the last item listed is the biggest problem, protein powder. Protein powder, which is sometimes made by extracting collagen from pig skins. In addition, it can be made with chicken stock or soy protein, but the soy protein tends to be made from genetically modified crops. So this meat additive that they're using to plump up all of the meats that are frozen and processed have meat glue in them, which can have pig skins or GMO soy. Think you're eating a clean meat? Not anymore. It's likely been contaminated. It's been defiled. It is now unclean. This is the adversary at work. If a defiled person who is unclean by reason of a dead body touches any of these, shall it be defiled? And the priest answered and said, it shall be defiled. So whatever the dead flesh of a pig touches is also defiled. That chicken breast has been defiled when meat glue made with pig skins gets injected into it. This is some of the equipment that they use to inject the meat glue and the brine into meats to plump up your chickens, your fish, and your beef. Your frozen and processed meat products, there are so many injection points in these machines, you can see that every single piece of meat on the production line is going to be injected. From the food processor's point of view, they make the meat look more succulent and they add weight to the meat with cheap meat glue and then sell the consumer the full price per pound of the meat. One deception. But even more importantly, meat glue uses unclean flesh which defiles the meat. There is death in the pot. Which brings us to the next food deception, the next part of the food plagues. His word says, you shall observe my law, you shall not sow your vineyard with diverse seed. Have you ever wondered what diverse seed is? The Greek word for diverse in that verse is G1313. It is defined as varying seed, but also surpassing, differing, diverse, and this is the use of the word to focus on, more excellent. You shall not sow your fields with more excellent seed, more efficient seed, or how they advertise it now, more virus and pest-resistant seed, or more producing seed. That's what you call more excellent seed. That's the diverse seed. Our Father says, don't use it. It says the same thing in Deuteronomy 22. Do not use diverse seed. There is no mixing. Where do we find diverse seed? The more excellent seed in the world now? This more diverse seed, this more excellent seed that is not supposed to be mixed in with our food sources is now happening on a worldwide scale. This is being fulfilled by something called genetically modified organisms, or the acronym that more people have heard, GMOs. Prophecy is being fulfilled in these last days. You shall not sow your fields with diverse seed. You shall not sow your fields with GMO products. The DNA has been modified so that now they are quote unquote more excellent for different things. They produce more, they're more resistant to pests, they're more resistant to diseases. And this is a quote right here. Currently, GM foods stem mostly from plants, but in the future, foods derived from GM microorganisms or GM animals, genetically modified animals, are likely to be introduced on the market. That quote is not from the National Enquirer. That quote comes from the website of the World Health Organization, the WHO. There's more. Even in 2010, the WHO was looking for how to insert microtechnologies into the food and agriculture sectors. That's also on their website. In 2015, a lawsuit was filed that accused the federal government of withholding information on GMO crops for over 10 years, all the way from 2005 to 2015. The government failed to regulate the GMO crops. That's almost 20 years now of unregulated GMO contamination into the nation's food supplies. The lawsuit stated that the environment will be damaged, including transgenic contamination of nearby crops, and these things have happened. Pesticide drift, endangerment of natural food sources, just more defilement of our food. Sugar is one of the biggest offenders, especially restaurant sugars, GMO beet sugars. Served by Starbucks and many other places, that's a known carcinogen. Our bodies were not made to eat unnatural GMO foods. But that's the plan of the adversary. There is death in the pot. But there's many GMO plants being sold now. And understand this, an organic label does not always mean non-GMO. Do not be fooled by the government USDA organic labels. Are we trusting our government at this point? That's what that 2015 lawsuit was all about. The government is not properly regulating GMOs, and those GMOs are permanently contaminating what were previously organic crops. The government organic certification process also doesn't address new GMOs, which are being developed all the time. The regulations have stopped at some point in the past. They're not worried about what's happening now. There's a lack of clarity on what's actually defining GMOs in their organic certification. They have no action threshold, meaning no damage penalties, no fines or enforcement for GMO contaminations by offending companies. It's a meaningless regulation. Food companies can put that government organic label on food products with GMO ingredients, and they know that they won't get fined or that any other action can be taken against them. That government USDA organic label is not what it's all cracked up to be. There are three main types of labels. That USDA organic certified label actually almost does a half-decent job of ensuring that no chemical pesticides have been used, but they have very faulty non-GMO regulation. Don't trust it for that. The second type of label, the non-GMO project labels, has a much stricter no GMO compliance threshold for companies to use their label on food packaging. This label is not associated with the government, which is a good thing. The Non-GMO Project is another company that makes other companies pay them to be able to put their label on their food packaging. And then the Non-GMO Project company goes out and actively certifies them. So it's much better, but maybe not foolproof. For example, it's possible that GMO feed is used for animal-derived ingredients. And animal products and or byproducts are allowed in organic labeled foods. You can get pig fat, pig skin, beaver juice, or bug juice in your organic food product. So neither an organic nor a non-GMO label will keep you from eating an unclean animal or a prohibited hard fat product. Now, the certified vegan.org label is the third label. It's another company that is not associated with the government. Again, a good thing. If it is vegan certified, there are no animal products or byproducts in it. Another good thing. But the vegan certified companies are allowed to use shared machinery that can run between vegan produce and produce that contains animal ingredients. When they do that, they are required to be cleaned before switching over to producing the vegan product. Now that may sound acceptable, but remember Leviticus and the issue with the restaurant dishes shown just minutes ago. So cleaning machinery is not sufficient unless the food producer waits until evening to start reusing the machine after they've processed an animal product, a pig, before they use it again on their vegan products. So even a vegan label is not foolproof in that regard in being compliant with the instructions he's given us in Leviticus 11. And organic, any organic, is not really pure anymore if it's in an open field. Can you guess why? Because you shall have over your head in the end times a sky of brass, meaning man-made things in the sky, and the earth underneath you shall be iron, and that iron is of the adversary. Yahweh shall make the rain of your land dust, and dust shall come down from heaven in it until it shall have destroyed you, and until it shall have quickly consumed you. This is from Deuteronomy 28. That specifically a curse for an unrepentant and a disobedient people in the end times. And what are we talking about for dust that comes down from heaven? Aluminum, barium, and strontium oxides and sulfates, which is exactly what makes up a majority of chemtrails. The dust from the chemtrails comes down from the skies and it's destroying the crops. Aluminum oxide is poisonous to all forms of life, animals and plants. We breathe it in and it's poisoning us, and the dust settles on the plants and the trees and slowly poisons them also. Aluminum oxide is even toxic to the dirt of the earth. From Job 18, his roots shall be dried up from beneath, and his crop shall fall away from the skies. More trees are falling over than ever before. Why? Because their root systems are shrinking. They're drying up and shrinking because the chemtrail dusts have poisoned the earth and is also killing the roots. And when the plants and the trees and the earth itself is destroyed, then mankind will be destroyed and consumed also. Deuteronomy 28 is an end-time curse upon the unrepentant peoples of the earth. Job 18 is the second witness to this curse, and it's being fulfilled in the plain sight of everyone on the earth, and almost no one comprehends this. The days of Noah and the days of Lot, and the people are blind, and they're being destroyed by lack of knowledge. Poison dust from the sky landing on our food. There is death in the pot. And here's Bill. You probably recognize Bill. He's one of the great merchants, one of the 10 kings with no throne, giving their power to the beast, and is one of the main advocates of climate engineering, including chemtrails to reduce global warming. That's what he says. But there are ulterior motives. This is a 2018 video from BitChute. Bill is talking about funding mRNA vaccines for cattle. This was 6 years ago. Bill's got his fingerprints in a lot of different places, doesn't he? Big Pharma wants livestock animals to be injected with mRNA, but some states like Arizona, Tennessee, Missouri, North Carolina, and Idaho have proposed legislation against it. Where have we seen Big Pharma and mRNA before? Now, you can actually see the legislation that these states have brought forth online. The different state bills that either request legislation to prohibit mRNA animal products, or at minimum clearly label animal products that have had mRNA injections placed in them. So the end result of the legislation at worst would be a label on the meat packages that would either say proudly injected or proudly not injected, whatever the companies would say. Well, guess what? There's been at least 10 states that have started legislation to prohibit or label mRNA meats, and at least 22 different bills, either state house or Senate bills. Of these bills, 11 are already dead in the water, and almost none of them have even gotten out of committee. The big pharma lobbyists and other important people that can influence the legislators are hard at work there in the committees, if you understand what I mean. One bill did get all the way through the Arizona House and Senate, but then it was vetoed by their governor. 10 states, 22 bills, and none of them have been approved. Every single one of them has been rejected by the dark powers of the world. The 10 states are Arizona, Idaho, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Utah. The website BillTrack50.com is where you can go to track any of these bills or search for other mRNA legislation. Maybe you're thinking that this is just too far out. This can't be real. This is just crazy talk from another conspiracy theory. Well, here's a video that is also on BitChute. This is a Missouri Association cattleman admitting on camera to the House of Missouri that he injects his cattle with mRNA shots.
Tonight, representing the Missouri Cattlemen's Association, I'll try and speed this up. I am not a doctor. I have flunked out, been kicked out, or dropped out of every major institution of higher education in the state of Missouri. This is probably one of the most poorly drafted pieces of legislation I've seen this session. Any entity that produces, that's my members, that sells, that's my members, or distributes a product in this state, that's my members, with the capacity to infect an individual with a disease or expose an individual to a genetically modified material. This past week, when most of you were on spring break in Florida enjoying the sun, I sold a load of cattle. That load of cattle that I sold had been double vaccinated with vaccinations that have this mRNA, which I don't know anything about other than I Googled a while ago. And I bought a load of cattle. And you know what I did the next morning after I brought those calves home? I vaccinated every one of those against bovine respiratory disease.
So what do the scriptures say? From Leviticus 19:19, you shall observe my law. You shall not let your cattle gender with one of a different kind. That verse is certainly speaking towards the desecration of the cattle that we have just seen. But when you look at one of the words in particular, there is a translation issue. The problem is with the word gender. There is no strong entry for a number of the Greek words that are found in the Septuagint, including the Greek word in Leviticus 19:19 that is translated as gender. So you have to go to other places like lexicons, such as the LSJ Greek to English lexicon. I'm just going to share the summary of the etymological research done to determine the actual meaning of this Greek word. But if you're interested in the details, you can stop the video and look at these slides for more information. The summary is that when you go to that lexicon, they point you for their reference for the word to a more ancient Greek lexicon that was compiled by a Greek grammarian named Hezekias in the 5th or 6th century AD. When you go to Hezekias's lexicon to verify what they're saying, you don't find the entry for the word that they say is there. So the LSJ is giving incorrect information. So that's a problem. When you look at Leviticus 19:19 in the Masoretic text and you look at the word gender in Hebrew, the Hebrew word is rabiah, H7250. It's found in 3 places in the Old Testament: Leviticus 18 verse 3, Leviticus 19:19, and Leviticus 20 verse 16. And it's the same word found in each one of those, and it means to squat down or lie flat specifically, or to let gender, and everybody knows what that means. So when you compare the Hebrew in each of those 3 verses to the Septuagint, you should find the same word used in both Hebrew and in Greek, but that's not the case. So in Leviticus 18 and Leviticus 20, where it's speaking of an inappropriate gendering, there's one Greek word that is used for that, and it means to mount. But in Leviticus 19:19, what we are focusing on, there is a completely different word. So when you put that word into modern translators, it shows that the word means possession. And when you really break apart the Greek in Leviticus 19:19, you see that there are a lot of implied words in the translation that have been added. They're trying to make the translation fit what they think that word means. They thought it meant gender. And so they added additional words to make the verse sound like you shall not let your cattle gender with one of a different kind. But when you take those implied words out and you use possess or possession instead of gender, you have a completely different story. Straight from the Greek, the verse reads, "You shall not possess cattle of a different kind." And what is a different kind again? Well, it's heterogeneous, something that originates from an outside source. And even more so, when you look at Leviticus 19:19, that is translated from King James into the Greek language, the Greek translation of the King James doesn't use gender. When you translate Leviticus 19:19 from the Greek version of the King James back into English, it reads, "You won't make your beast to be heteroids." So a heteroid is a result of heterosis, and heterosis is the improvement or the increased function of any biological quality in a hybrid, a heterogeneous offspring. And that should sound very familiar to everybody, because what's a different way of saying an improved or increased function for any biological quality? It's called gain of function research. Medical research that genetically alters an organism in a way that may enhance the biological functions of gene products and produces hybrid animals, hybrid people, heterogeneous animals, heterogeneous people, heteroids. Why did the translators from even 100 years ago mistranslate the word into gender instead of make or possess? Well, 100 years ago, they would have had no idea that in the future you could inject an animal or a person with some pharmakia sorcery special sauce and turn them into something different than our Heavenly Father had originally created. Leviticus 19:19 states, "You shall not possess animals that are heterogeneous. You shall not possess or make animals into heteroids. You shall not possess animals that are gain-of-function hybrids. You shall not make animals into gain-of-function hybrids from mRNA vaccines." Guess what, everybody? This was March 2023. It's happening right now. It's already in the meats. It's already in your grocery stores. Beware of your meat products. There is death in the pot. But at least we have chickens, right? There was something called bird flu a year or two ago, and just a few months ago, supposedly. Where the government decided to destroy millions of chickens because of quote-unquote bird flu. Well, they had to have a plan for that terrible quote-unquote epidemic, so they've come up with the plan to have mass vaccinations for poultry. The objective, and this is on the USDA website, is to make mRNA vaccines which will be used to inoculate chickens. This is one of the products. It's called Innovax. Look at this quote. "These companies are proud of these things. This product is similar to the quote-unquote safe and effective mRNA vaccines that was pushed upon the peoples of the earth about 4 years ago from a certain patented pre-planned pandemic illness." In case you don't know, that C-19 illness was bioengineered and patented years before the earth had ever heard about it, and then dropped on the peoples of the earth from the chemtrail planes. This cutting-edge poultry vaccine uses DNA viral vaccine technology to teach the chicken's immune system to do whatever they want it to do, similar to what other mRNA vaccines are doing. This is from 2017, and they are proud of their history and their accomplishments. This was the first ever biotech-based vaccine. Maybe you can see where all of this is heading. Now, this is from 2019. They have now come up with animal health digital tracking, traceability, and monitoring technology. So if you've ever seen a chicken house, think of how many thousands of chickens are in that huge, huge building. And they are now saying that they can digitally track, trace, and monitor every chicken in that building with their technology. Those chickens are not wearing necklaces or bracelets. The tracker and the monitors have been injected. Do you see where this is going? Can you see where they might plan to use this next? Each of those chickens probably has a computer MAC address in it, just like the pandemic shots were given with MAC addresses, so that everybody has their own number and that everybody that takes those shots can be digitally traced and in the end monitored. This is the plan. Remember Microsoft Patent 666? There is death in the pot. But at least we have fish to eat, right? Not so fast, my friend. For the fish, they put the vaccines into the fish food. Even right now, there are more than 140 fish vaccines that have been approved. The vaccine types include, surprise, surprise, genetically engineered vaccines. There is death in the pot. So what's their next step after putting the vaccines into the cows and the chickens and the fish? Especially as the peoples of the earth are starting not to listen to their quote-unquote wisdom and not staying up to date with the government-recommended boosters. So the next step is to produce oral vaccines that are inside of edible crops. Starting from oral vaccines for fish, their plan is to replace natural food with more efficient food, more excellent food spiked with vaccines. They're making vaccines in plants, and they're proud of this too, based on the experience from human vaccines produced in plants. That might be a very big surprise to some people. These technologies are creating a web of evil devices of all of these things. Bill and his friends are weaving this trap around the peoples of the earth. This is an end-time plague. Plant poisoning is real. Ever heard of apeel? Yes, Bill is behind that too. It's a coating on organic produce that they say is used to lengthen the lifetime of the organic foods. So they spray apeel on the organic produce so it stays fresh longer in the supermarkets. Now, Bill tried to hide the proprietary chemicals, but they didn't hide all of the ingredients. Apeel has mono and diglycerides in the ingredients. So everything that has Bill's apeel on it, every product, every orange, every pepper, every lemon that's organic that has apeel on it is covered with pig and animal hard fat that we are not supposed to eat. This is the adversary at work, working at all costs to defile our temples. There is death in the pot. MIT, among other places, is working to make RNA vaccines easier to swallow. A pill that releases its payload into the stomach offers the beast system a new way to administer mRNA vaccines. And they have developed a way to deliver these RNA payloads that can be produced and swallowed and get through the stomach acid and taken in through the intestines into the bloodstream. Grow and eat your vaccines? Scientists at the University of California, Riverside in 2021 were studying whether they could turn edible plants like lettuce into mRNA vaccine factories, which they could then put in grocery stores and feed to people on a regular basis. So the vaccine is continually given and applied no matter what you're eating or no matter how compliant you are with their recommended booster program. One of their challenges of edible plant-based mRNA vaccines was the storage temperature. You may remember that the pandemic shots had to be kept in cold storage. That's almost 4 years ago now, so it's quite likely that that hurdle has been overcome. And there won't be a big press release when the vaccinated plants are being put into the supermarkets. Just like they didn't put out a press release when the cattle mRNA vaccination started. And it should make everyone a little more vigilant that the mainstream media released a fake news fact check in 2023 to try to deceive people that nothing was happening. The title to their fake news fact check states that those special vaccines are not in the food supply. But their article says that there is a limited use of RNA-based vaccines in animals. Did you catch that? They admitted it right there. Fact-checking, simply put, is part of the beast machinery that is implemented to browbeat people into accepting their narratives. Now from the National Library of Medicine, published in 1999, 25 years ago, and this is a government website. The NIH, the National Center for Biotechnology Information, in 1999 released a review of oral vaccination with transgenic vegetables, genetically modified vegetables, GMO vegetables, or oral vaccines. They figured out almost 25 years ago now how vaccine antigens cloned into edible transgenic plants are a promising new delivery system for oral vaccines. The fake fact checkers didn't mention that. This is an article by ABC News from the year 2020, touting the benefits of growing vaccinated fruits and vegetables to save the lives of the children, they said. They were proud of it back then, 24 years ago. Now they're hiding it. Now it's a fact check. I hope you're connecting these dots. There are more National Library of Medicine studies. The medical tests proved that they could put vaccines in corn and affect the change they desired to have in lab animals. Their tests were 100% successful. This was almost 25 years ago. GMO corn that had vaccines in it was fed to mice, and it was 100% successful. The World Health Organization, the WHO, now states that vaccine carrier plants such as potatoes and corn are readily accepted by patients and are now cheap to produce. That means that they now have overcome any technical challenges and can mass produce the GMO vaccinated plants. For the dark powers of the world, this is about defilement, enslavement, and depopulation. People still have to eat. They won't take their shots willingly, but they'll be deceived into eating mRNA-injected animal meats, and they'll be deceived into eating GMO vaccine carrier fruits and vegetables. This is another reason not to eat any GMO product, in addition to the understanding that it is diverse seed. It may already be in the produce aisles of your grocery store, and you may never know. There is death in the pot. So let's go back to prophecy, because his word is truth. Alas, for the day of Yahweh is nigh, and it shall come as trouble upon trouble. Your meat has been destroyed before your eyes. What shall we store up for ourselves? When you look at the word meat, G1033, it's food, and it is specifically the food that is allowed by his instructions, by Leviticus 11. And the word destroyed comes from derivatives of G1537 and G3645. G1537 is exo. It's a prefix, and we use it in English even to this day in words like exoskeleton. It means out or outside or from the outside. And then G3645 is to spoil or destroy with a future passive tense suffix at the end of it. It's a future tense, a prophecy. This is Yahweh speaking. Fear me and receive instruction, and you shall not be cut off from the face of the land for all the vengeance that I will bring upon her. Prepare you, rise early. What are we preparing by rising early? Our own food. Why should we do these things? He said, all their produce is spoiled. All of it. So the Greek word for spoiled is G1311. It means to rot thoroughly, to ruin, to corrupt, to destroy, to perish. And this is absolutely an end-time prophecy, for the next verses speak of Armageddon, when all the nations of the earth are gathered together, and he returns and he pours out his wrath upon them and on the entire earth. All their produce is spoiled, and the same with the people that eat it. And now we can understand the gravity of what Messiah said, that unless the days be shortened, that no flesh shall be saved. The food is defiling people now. The injections are another. The poison dust is another. 5G radiation. The directed energy weapon fires from the beast, and more plagues to come. But except these days be shortened soon, because of all of these things, there shall no flesh be saved. This is what the beginning of tribulation looks like. This national, and is quickly spreading worldwide, this defilement of the earth's food is part of the spider's web of the great deception, the food deception, part of the attack by the adversary on the people of Elohim. There is death in the pot. Physical death, but more so, spiritual death. Understand that what we are witnessing are curses for a wicked and adulterous, perverse generation. Curses that were prophesied in Deuteronomy 28. It shall come to pass, if you will not hearken unto the voice of Yahweh, thy Elohim, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. Cursed you shall be in the city, and cursed you shall be in the field. Cursed shall be your basket and your store, your supermarkets. Cursed shall be the fruit of your land, your plants, and the flocks of your sheep, your animals. Yahweh shall make the pestilence cleave unto you like that aluminum oxide, until he has consumed you from off the land. And thy heaven that is over you shall be brass, and the earth underneath you shall be iron. Yahweh shall make the rain of thy land aluminum oxide powder and sulfides, and dust from heaven shall come upon you until you be destroyed. Then Yahweh will make thy mRNA plagues and your pig fat plagues, and the plagues of your seed, your GMO seed, and the seed war of the shots, even great plagues, and of long continuance and sore sicknesses. Also, every sickness and every plague, and even those which are not written in the book of this law, even those will Yahweh bring upon you until you are destroyed. He that is in the city, famine and pestilence, the plagues, all of these plagues, shall devour him. And when he had opened the fourth seal, a pale horse, and his name that sat upon him was Death, and hell followed with him. Authority was given to them over a fourth of the earth, to kill with sword and famine and the wild beasts of the earth and death. And that death is all these plagues. There is death in the pot. This may be a very hard message for many. You have to prepare now because the world's produce is ruined. So what can be done? His instruction for these last days is simple and direct. Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you do not receive her plagues. Pray for his guidance to lead you out of this snare that the dark powers of this world have constructed to cage people, defile people, and then kill them with poisoned and unclean foods and poisoned water and poisoned air and poisoned and unclean pharmakia. Leave the cities where they will be able to control and coerce the citizens. Go to the wilderness, the rural areas. Go to the mountains or even the plains, and prepare everyone. Prepare now. Prepare for your family. Prepare for your children. That's what his instruction for his people is right now. It's time to be a farmer. Rise up early, grow your food, and use only heirloom, organic, non-GMO seeds. Find a way, if at all possible, to grow in a greenhouse or under a roof because of all of the poisonous dust falling from the sky that is slowly and steadily destroying everything. Raise your own animals, and if you don't, know where they're coming from and know that they're pure. Here we are seeing something that was seemingly impossible, and now it's being completely fulfilled. His word never returns void. It always comes to fruition. Did we not just see that all the produce of the land is being spoiled in one way or another? Every food source, cows, chickens, fish, the mixing of unclean animals and prohibited hard fats into all of our products. People are eating it, people are washing with it, people are brushing their teeth with it, wearing it on their faces, and rubbing it all over their bodies. The people are defiling his temple where his spirit resides. And then also the poisonous dust from the air raining down, further spoiling the produce and consuming all. All their produce is spoiled. There is death in the pot. His word is truth, and he's warned us. And so now we finish this message with where we started. 2 Kings chapter 4 is a multi-layered shadow picture. This is one layer of that shadow picture. And Elisha returned to Gilgal, and a famine in the land, and the sons of the prophets sat before him. Elisha in Hebrew means Elohim Yasha, or Elohim saves. Gilgal in Hebrew means circle. Elisha here is a shadow for Yahushua HaMashiach, our Messiah, in the last days when he returns to the circle, the Gilgal, to the circle of the face of the earth. There is a famine in the land, but not of food or water, but of the word of Yahweh. Behold, victuals, food, shall be so good, cheap upon the earth, that they shall think themselves to be in good case, and even then shall evils grow upon the earth, sword, famine, and great confusion. The sons of the prophets represents the commonwealth of Israel, which all are called to become part of. Spiritual Israel, but specifically those that are called to be part of the kingdom of priests. And Elijah said to his servant, Set on the great pot and boil pottage for the sons of the prophets. That great pot represents the food supply of the earth. And he went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a vine in the field, and gathered of it wild gourds, his garment full, and he cast it into the cauldron of the pottage, for they knew not. And he poured it out for the men to eat. And it came to pass, when they were eating of the pottage, that, lo and behold, they cried out and said, There is death in the pot. And here we are. The wild gourd that they did not know is what caused death to be in the pot. And the pig fat ingredients, and the prohibited hard fats, and the natural flavors, the vaccines, and the GMOs, all those things that when you look at food, you don't know that it's in there. The wild gourd represents the modified and defiled foods across the face of the earth that are hidden from the earth, not known, not even to many believers. The modified foods, the defiled foods, will lead to both physical death because they are poisons and spiritual death. And lo, we are crying out now, there is death in the pot. They cried out to Elisha, and they could not eat. And maybe you're feeling exactly the same way right now if you're seeing these dark deceptions for the first time, crying out to Messiah for help. But the prophet Elisha told his servant to take meal, flour, and cast it into the pot, and pour it out for the people, and let them eat, and there was no longer any hurtful thing in the pot. This represents Messiah, the prophet of Deuteronomy 18, telling his servants, us, to eat first the flour of the living bread from heaven, his word, understand his word, do his word. And when we Shema, hear his word, and we do what his word says, fear me and receive instruction, and get away from the unclean food products of the earth, that wild gourd, because all their produce is spoilt, and grow and eat uncontaminated, clean foods, the food he intended for us. Prepare thou, you, rise early now, that there will no longer be death in our pots. You shall not be cut off from the face of the land for all the vengeance that has been brought upon her when you heed his instructions. And also to pour his word out for the people and let them eat. So a call for us to share his good news to the world right now. That difficult and narrow path to share this message, and to share this message of the death in the pot and the life in his word, and warn others. Let the people hear and eat. Brothers and sisters, there is death in the pot, but come out of her, my people, out of the ways of the world, so that you do not partake in the world's plagues and sins. Keep his temple in sanctification and honor, for he has not called us unto uncleanness, but unto sanctification. Prepare now, eat clean, and cleanse your hearts. Be set apart, for he is set apart. And his promise to you is this: Be ye set apart, says Yahweh, and touch not the unclean thing, and Yahweh Almighty will receive you and be a father unto you, and you will be his sons and daughters for all eternity, says Yahweh Almighty. And there was no longer any hurtful thing in the pot. And he that endures these things until the end, the same shall be saved. This is our Father's word, his prophetic warning that is now being fulfilled, these end-time curses, the plagues and the sins, and also his promise to bless any that will choose to be faithful, to have both the testimony of Yahushua HaMashiach, and to keep and to do the commandments of Elohim, and being among the few that choose his difficult, narrow path to life over staying in the world on the broad path to destruction. We were chosen for such a time as this. You can do it. You can do all things by him who strengthens you. I call heaven and earth to record this day. I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life, that both you and your children may live. And as these last days are now coming to the end, to the very day of Yahweh, it is now time for you to make your choice. Thank you for listening. May eyes and hearts be open to the truth. There is death in the pot.